This video is for adults only. Viewer discretion is advised. Everything I'm sharing is my opinion.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Hello, friends. Come on in. My name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist with additional training in statement analysis. This video is for adults only. Viewer discretion is advised. And David Anthony Burke is innocent until proven guilty. So come on in, tell me where you're from, because today we're going to be discussing 5 major mistakes that the perpetrator made in this case. And we're going to go through some more information that has been shared with us by private investigator Steve Fischer from SF Investigates, where he shares some really crucial details that I have not heard before. And I'm assuming that most of you guys have not heard about it either. So this live stream is going to be packed full of crucial information. So please stay with me till the end. Come on in. You can tell me what city, what state, what country, but come on in and tell me where you're from. So let's begin with new information about David's label, updates on the grand jury, and then we're going to go through the 5 biggest mistakes the perpetrator made and another interview with private investigator Steve Fischer. So we are hearing reporting that the grand jury has witnesses that are scheduled to be called in February. So we may not get indictments in this case until February, maybe even early March. Now, David Anthony Burke was reportedly dropped from his label, finally. He was dropped from his label and marketing campaign. So I think that this is really, really interesting. Major brands, including Hollister and Crocs, reportedly dropped him from marketing campaigns, and collaborators like Kaylee Uchis removed joint tracks that she was streaming with David. And as you know, he retained a high profile criminal defense attorney named Blair Burke, no relation to David Burke. And she is known for defending criminals who have perpetrated specific types of crimes, similar, and I'm watching my words, to crimes that were committed allegedly by the former Prince Andrew. He's now known as Andrew Mountbatten, and also uh, Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. So we have a pretty good idea of why David selected this particular criminal defense attorney. And in my opinion, he's worried also about the illegal relationship that he allegedly had with Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Please say her name, put purple hearts in the chat. So he's worried about his illegal relationship with Celeste, in addition to other charges that are probably going to come. Now, his PR machine has been maintaining all along that he has been cooperating with the LAPD. And of course, we know that this is simply not true. The LAPD chose to remain silent when asked about it initially, and then later came out and said that he was not cooperating. So why, if he is innocent and has nothing to lose, wouldn't he go in with his lawyer and share what he knows? Now, last time we all got together for the live stream that we did this weekend, we talked about the great interview that SF Investigates did with Steve Fischer, but he also appeared in a law and crime interview, and we have 5 major updates that we're going to go through on that. But before we do, I want to go through some of the probably the 3 most bizarre takeaways and aspects of this crime, and then we're going to go through the major updates. But number 1 is the romantic homicide parallels. Before this case began, David rose to fame with the viral song Romantic Homicide, which was released in 2023 with that creepy video of Celeste, of a lookalike for Celeste. I shouldn't say it wasn't Celeste, it was an actress. But after, she was found in the trunk of his car, and looking back and finding out that he did seem to be obsessed with Celeste. And he talks about the girl with my name tattooed on her chest. I'm obsessed. Now, I don't know if she had her tattoo of his name there. He may have just been trying to rhyme. But we do know that she had it on her ring finger, because we do know this because we've seen the picture of Celeste with the engagement ring, or what is reported to be Celeste. I believe it to be Celeste. Number 2 is the identical Shhh tattoos that David and Celeste reportedly shared on their right index fingers. This detail has fueled intense speculation by many of you online that there was a pre-existing and illegal relationship between a 20-year-old and a 13-year-old. So and then 3 is that discovery of the burn cage and the discovery of the chainsaw that we talked about during the last live stream. In late 2025 and early 2026, private investigator Steve Fischer reported that a 55-pound burn cage, which is basically an incinerator that can go to temperatures beyond what a human body can be cremated at. You will recall that he said that cremation can take place at 1400 degrees, and this incinerator goes to 1600 degrees. Now, the chainsaw was also discovered in the Hollywood Hills mansion that David was renting. Well, actually, Josh Marshall was renting it, right? Not David. So investigators believe that these items may have been part of a plan to part B of the plan, and that maybe she was parked in the Tesla around the corner because whoever was supposed to do this didn't do this. I have a different theory on it. I believe that he intended to keep Celeste and that this may have been for a future plan, but we'll find out. I could be wrong. So the burn cage was reportedly still in its box inside the mansion, which is why I don't think it was part B for the plan. And there was also a chainsaw left behind as well. And we also learned that similar to Brian Kohlberger, the person that purchased this, David Anthony Burke, it was in his house, delivered to his house under a fake name. But just like Brian Kohlberger, he used gift cards, allegedly, in my opinion, to purchase these items, although supposedly it was a female. And many people are wondering if this is the accomplice that is going to be indicted along with David Anthony Burke. So Brian Kohlberger, you will recall, made a purchase in March of 2022 of the K-Bar knife and knife sharpener on Amazon using gift cards. And he had his items delivered under his own name to his parents' house. So let's go through the 5 major updates that we have in the D4VD case with Jesse Weber and Law and Crime. In my opinion, this is just another time where David is snitching on himself. But let me pull this up. All right. My computer is thinking. Let me try one more time. Okay, we got it. Nope. Yep. Okay. Let me move myself down here. And let me push this in. So after we go through this, we're going to, and I want to do a shout out to NJAS for the research. We're going to go through some other ways that David was snitching on himself after we go through this together. So we're going to go about 4 minutes and 30 seconds in. I'm not playing the whole thing. I just have some highlights I want to pick up. And let me turn on the...
This is due to a court order that was initiated by the LAPD. Okay, so with all that in mind, time to bring back on Steve Fischer. Steve, really good to see you. It's been a minute since we've had you on. A lot has been happening. So first of all, where are you in your investigation? I mean, since the last time we...
And just a quick sound check. Can you guys hear the sound okay? I just don't want to play the whole thing and then find out you guys couldn't hear it. Let me move myself over too while we're doing that. Can you hear it, NJAS? Yeah, and Michael says yes. Okay, great. NJAS says yes. Deanna says yes. Thank you so much for modding. This is our head mod, Michael, our other head mod, NJAS, and our mod, Deanna. Thank you so much for modding today. Tammy's modding today. Is there anybody else here that's modding? Drop me a comment. I will shout you out. Thank you for modding, if you are modding. Anybody else modding today? We know Tammy is. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, let's continue, and we're going to go through this together.
Spoke. What is there anything new you can tell us? I mean, where are you right now in your personal investigation?
You know, so we continue to investigate it and talk to new people. Just as of yesterday, we contacted by somebody that's actually ends up being very close to David and had a relationship with him around that time. So we're continuing to get new information, to learn more about, those events and who was around at that time and who was living at the house and not living at the house. So it continues. More people keep popping up that weren't even on our radar.
And
so I'm going to assume that some of these people, if they're cooperating with private investigator Steve Fischer, and they were part of David's entourage, living in the house or around the house or coming to the house often, that they're also cooperating with the deputy district attorney, Beth Silverman, and testifying before the grand jury. Let's continue on.
To be clear, whatever information you're gathering, is that something that you're sharing with law enforcement, with the DA's office? Is there anything you can tell us about what information you're sharing with them as we're trying to understand what's happening behind closed doors?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything that we determine is not just noise. I mean, obviously get a lot of, people calling, with information that's not relevant, theories or remote viewers and stuff. But the people that are tied, we pass that right along to authorities, to their investigators. They don't tell us the outcome of what they follow up or not, but we do absolutely make them aware, because this is not about collecting information and getting it out to the public first, or not getting it or keeping it private. It's about justice for Celeste in the end, right? So right. We are definitely giving all the information to authorities.
And I really do believe that PI and private investigator Steve Fischer is interested in justice for Celeste. He's done what he needed to do to protect what the LAPD has asked him to protect. He's never released the name of the driver of the Tesla. My understanding is that he has testified before the grand jury twice. This is alleged. This is what I'm hearing through the grapevine. But let's continue on, because he has some really interesting information that I was not aware of, and maybe you have not heard this either.
Do you have any further insight into where David is right now?
I don't. I could just speculate. I know that not long after they canceled the tour and this whole thing came crashing down, I believe he was in the LA area, because when he transferred those homes in Texas into a trust, those were notarized by an LA notary. So at time, it appears he was in LA, but whether he is in Texas or LA or who knows where, I would think that LAPD probably has a good idea, but I don't have any idea. And I'm shocked. One of the biggest things in this whole case, I'm just amazed that he's kept such a low profile and had that restraint to not make any public statements or lash out online.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything from him. I haven't heard anything from his reported attorney, Blair Burke, regarding any of this.
So they've remained silent. And in my opinion, I think that if he wanted to really exonerate himself, or he really didn't do it, I think he and his attorney absolutely could have done a couple of things. One is they could have placed a statement when Celeste was found in the car expressing condolences to her family. He could have put this out jointly with his attorney together, just to express his condolences. I think that would have been a nice touch, in my opinion. But again, if he is guilty of this and he's been told to be quiet, he is listening to her. So I guess that is a good thing. But the other thing is that they have never gone forward, that we are aware of, to the LAPD to sit down with them to exonerate himself, to clear himself from this. And I would think that if he didn't do anything wrong, that he would absolutely sit down with his attorney sitting by his side, go in and answer whatever questions he could in an effort to assist the LAPD. He has not done that. And I'm not saying that makes him guilty. I'm just saying it's interesting and worth putting a pin in that. So let's continue on.
Get into this photo of Celeste, which I think is really important. When you hear TMZ reporting that a grand jury has been assembled and they're now saying that it is likely that he could be charged with murder, based on your investigation, would you say that doesn't seem likely? Or do you say, and I know you might be limited in what you can reveal to us, but when you hear something like that, do you say they seem far off? They might be on the right track? I can't talk about it, because that was a very big headline.
Sure. So as far as murder goes itself, as a subset of homicide, right? I do think it's likely, and here's why. It has nothing to do with if there may be grand juries or not. When that rumor first broke, which I believe was from the LA Times, it was from a document that was filed to seal the medical examiner's records that was filed with LA courts. There was a short window of time that filing itself was released by the clerk's office. And I'll tell you, I've seen the original document, and in the motion, it uses the word murder. So,
Okay, so I think that's really interesting, very helpful to know. So the idea that he's just being investigated for having an illegal relationship with Celeste is simply not the case. It literally says in the document the M word. Let's continue on.
that was a public document at the time. Now I know it's been sealed, but it didn't say homicide investigation. It actually said murder. So just based off that, not anything I have found. I can tell you, I've luminoled the house. I've done other testing at the house, and there's nothing there that I would say it looks like this is a crime scene, a violent crime scene. But I can tell you, I have seen that document. It is legit, and it did say murder.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. And maybe, he luminoled the mansion, but we know that that Celeste, we have pictures and video of David and Celeste at the Doheny property, which I've showed you guys in the past. So with the images of the Doheny property and the fact that he may have had Celeste stashed there, this doesn't mean she never came to the mansion or never spent the night at the mansion, but maybe she was residing at the Doheny property, which conveniently went back on the market on March the 7th. Right? Because we believe that Celeste was probably done away with sometime between the last known photo that we know of Celeste on January 2nd and the end of February, when he replaced that Tesla in February with that red Tesla. And then the house on Doheny went back on the market on March 7th. So it was probably turned back over to the landlord sometime in February. So, but let's continue on together. And that may be why Steve Fischer luminoled the mansion, but didn't find anything.
Assuming that for a moment, right? What changed? The LAPD came out at one point, I think it was like 2 months ago, and said there might not be anything beyond concealment of a body. Any idea what may have changed to suggest that Celeste was killed?
The only thing I think about this a lot too. The only thing I can think of is that somebody flipped it, because if they had all of a sudden run across some sort of biological evidence or some crime scene, I think the charges would have dropped pretty quick. But you're right. They went from, hey, there might not be any culpability beyond concealment of a body, which is a misdemeanor, to all of a sudden, not just homicide, but murder. And so something changed there. And I think they would have already charged if they had a murder weapon or a scene or whatever. So I think it's got to be based on somebody's cooperating, somebody cut a deal.
Well, that's really good news. Because that may be why they need the grand jury to indict. They need to get all of their ducks in the row. And we know that there is supposedly an accomplice, from everything that we've heard from the reporting. And Steve Fischer still has not told us who drove the Tesla from the mansion back over to Bluebird Avenue. We know it was parked on Bluebird Avenue previously, but back over to Bluebird Avenue for its final time before David left on tour on July 29th. Let's continue on with private investigator Steve Fischer, who appeared on Jesse Weber's Law and Crime. The show is called Sidebar. And
not just the findings from the ME's office, which we don't know what they are.
Yeah, we don't know what they are because they sealed those. I do think that I know most people speculate that it's undetermined. I personally, and I don't have any inside information on this, I do believe that they were able to make a determination. I know her remains were in very bad shape, but if you go back to the death certificate said that, she wasn't pregnant. Well, that means they were able to get that hormone test, or they were able to inspect the internal organs enough to determine that. So the fact that they were able to get that means I think they were able to get a good toxicology test. So I do think that they probably made a determination. And once they made that determination is when LAPD went in and got those petition to get that sealed on the 21st, I think it was.
And what we've seen in other cases where somebody, like in the Kylie Rodney case, where she was in the water for a long time, they went in through the vitreous humor, which is the eye, and that's how they got a toxicology screen on Kylie to show that she was impaired and was intoxicated. So hopefully we will learn more about this once the gag order has been lifted and once the indictments have been submitted or have been are raining down, I hope indictments plural, from the grand jury. So we know that there is at least one accomplice. We don't know if this is the accomplice that flipped or if this was just somebody who was living in the mansion or somebody who was in and around, hanging around with David that knew. We know there were security guards filming the moving out of the mansion, and we know somebody, and they were filming it. So somebody was watching on the other end of the camera. I'm wondering, what do you guys think? And I think this is a huge mistake. Why didn't they remove the burn cage and the chainsaw? Law enforcement didn't take it. They left it behind. And thank goodness Steve Fischer got it. Let's continue on.
Yeah. So again, just trying to understand what that change might have been. Okay. So I'll go back to that in a second. I have to talk about this new photo of Celeste that you apparently found. So talk to us about what this photo is, where you discovered it, and when was it taken? Do you know?
Yeah, so it was taken January 2nd of 2025. It was on a SD card, a memory card that goes into a camera that was, after they moved out of the house, that was left behind. And it had, I think, about 1,100 photos on it.
That's a lot of photos, you guys. I just am wondering what else was on that camera.
Various things. Only a handful that included Celeste. And this was the last that we had previously released one that was, I think, on the 30th of December of her downtown. Presumably he took the picture. This is a photo of the Baldwin Hills Scenic Overlook, which is kind of a hiking area in Culver City, kind of in the heart of Los Angeles. And it's about 5:05 p.m., January 2nd. And it's a profile photo of her. To me, it's just very sad. She looks lost. She looks like a runaway to me, and like a confused runaway. And I don't know, it just breaks my heart to look at that picture. But I do think it's important for the public to see it too, that she was alive and she's a real person. And we're talking about somebody that really deserves justice.
I agree with Steve Fischer's take on this. And the other photo that he's talking about that he released is the mirrored one with the two heads. I'll show it to you in a little bit. And that was followed just within a minute of David holding up his hand holding up a knife against the cityscape. And I believe that this was taken before the final photo that Steve Fischer just presented to you guys of Celeste wearing the hoodie. And I think that this was David telling Celeste what he was going to do. And as I shared with you in the last live stream, I think that one of the ways that, and we saw this in the Chris Watts case, where he telegraphed what he was going to do to Shanann by sending a picture of a doll with a sheet over it. And I think that David did something similar with Celeste. And this does a couple of things. One, they get a little bit of duping delight from knowing that what they're going to do without telling the victim what they're going to do. But the other thing is they can kind of absolve themselves because they can tell themselves, well, I warned them. They just didn't heed my warning. So the doing these images does two things for perpetrators like Chris Watts and alleged perpetrators like David Anthony Burke.
100%. Do you know who took the photo?
I assume it's by David simply because it's his camera, and then there's pictures later that evening where he's taking them into a mirror, and you can see that he's holding the.
And the picture you're looking at right now was taken at the Doheny property. And I have verified this with other images that I presented to you previously. So I'm not going to rehash that today. But this was taken in the bathroom at the Doheny property, which is separate from the mansion, which may be the scene of the crime.
The camera and whatnot. So I assume it's him, but then I will say that there's a couple pictures immediately after that one of her on the camera of him. So I think that they were together, and just like they were on the 30th in downtown, I think they had these little excursions and took a lot of photos in hiking type of situations or out in the kind of foresty area. So
how does that factor into the timeline about what might have happened to her? I mean, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, because, originally we reported, right, she had disappeared in 2024, and then there was this sighting of her with the neighbors. So how does this affect the timeline of understanding when she died?
And I just got to give shout out to Jesse Weber here. He went in with his own questions. And I think this just really adds on to the interview that was done with Nancy Grace rather than just rehashing it. So kudos to Jesse Weber.
Yeah. So originally people were thinking, well, maybe she died a week or so before she was found. And I originally had said, I think she was in there for months. And now I know LAPD saying they think possibly springtime, it sounds like, reading between the lines. I think it could be as early as January. And I'm not saying that day on January 2nd, but a couple things happened on the timeline there. So we got January 2nd, the photos of her stop. And his behavior, taking photos and whatnot, kind of drastically changes around that time too. But then also the Tesla, the black Tesla that she's in, stops really being used and showing up. It used to show up in a lot of Instagram reels and photos and whatnot. And then it's being parked in different areas around the neighborhood. And not too long ago, I spoke with an estate manager from a house in the area, and they told me that they were talking about this smell. And it's the first I had heard from them. And she's like, we had a dog, one of the dogs died, and they buried it in the backyard. And it's a very large, backyard, but the Tesla would park in the area. And they said anytime we get over about 70 degrees or so, the backyard would get this horrible smell. And they thought that they had not buried the dog deep enough. And they were getting ready to unearth this dog and rebury it. But then the Tesla disappeared. And when I asked when this dog died, it was in February. And she said it was a very distinct, death smell. Now, once the Tesla disappeared in June.
And you can see here from the sign that they're showing where Bluebird Avenue, that's where the car was parked the final time before the tow truck company came and got it and towed it to the impound lot. And just around the corner from there is Doheny Drive, where I believe that Celeste was staying.
I got moved up to Bluebird, all of a sudden the smell went away. So I do think, January, then that happening in February, I do think, January to March is probably a sweet spot where something could have happened. And also they lease a new Tesla on February 1st.
Oh, that's interesting too. I didn't know that. What about if you can expand.
When the search warrant was served, we all of a sudden we saw on the news there was a red Tesla being pulled out of the garage and ran the DMV on it, and it comes back to Rob Morganrath, his manager. And
so you guys, we heard Josh Marshall saying he didn't have anything to do with the red Tesla. People kept saying the manager. And at that time, I don't think we really knew that much about Rob M. That's what we call him on this channel. But now we're finding out his name was on the lease of the Tesla and Josh Marshall's name was on the lease of the mansion. You guys, let me back it up a little bit.
All of a sudden the smell went away. So
and I believe that he was given an immunity deal, allegedly, in my opinion. He was definitely testifying with an attorney in tow. We know this because this is what's been reported out by TMZ. And we know that he had to allegedly go to Department 123, where that's where the judge is, because the judge doesn't preside over a grand jury. It's just the prosecutor in there giving the jury all of the information, including exculpatory information. And then the jury can decide whether or not to indict or not to indict, because this doesn't have to be beyond a reasonable doubt. It just has to be kind of a little more than 50% more likely than not. So finding out that Rob M is the one that leased that red Tesla is really, really interesting.
I think, January, then that happening in February, I do think, January to March is probably a sweet spot where something could have happened. And also they lease a new Tesla on February 1st.
Oh, that's interesting too. I didn't know that. What about if you can expand.
When the search warrant was served, we all of a sudden we saw on the news there was a red Tesla being pulled out of the garage and ran the DMV on it, and it comes back to Rob Morganrath, his manager, and it was leased on February 1st. So all of a sudden, January, the Tesla stops being used for some reason. February, there's a new Tesla. There's horrible smell starts originating after February. So you got to wonder.
Right. And by the way, I should also let everybody know, if you haven't been following our coverage, Morganrath allegedly testified in front of this grand jury as well, and allegedly said something in the hallways, being questioned by the prosecutor about why he didn't notify more about what was going on. Let me ask you this: there's this conversation about
and he described the prosecutor as being pushy about it. And I told you guys, I just thought this misogyny that why, Rob Morganrath and why Josh Marshall thought that the type of imagery that David was using in his music videos, and his fixation on hurting young women, why they thought this was okay and they were going to make this guy a superstar is just beyond me. But let's continue on.
And LAPD seemed to confirm that David took this trip to Santa Barbara, right? So how would that factor into your timeline?
I can't figure out what the purpose of that trip would be, to be honest with you. I don't know if they went there to do something to her or to She's already deceased and, put her in some other form. Why bring her back again? Now, I will say that there's a lot of photos on this camera in the National Forest, but not in Santa Barbara, not terribly far from there, within 75 miles or so. But I don't know. The Santa Barbara thing is really confusing me. There seemed to be this total confusion of what to do with her, I guess, if they're making trips and then chickening out. And this is what baffles me of why there hasn't been an arrest yet. Because if they're that sloppy, they leave this girl in a Tesla in a neighborhood, they can't figure out how to get rid of her, then how do they not have the evidence yet to be able to drop some charges? Because it's so sloppy. It seems like there's got to be a ton of other evidence, because I know there's video stuff out there.
Well, you
And I agree. And that's why I wonder if maybe this spreads out to more people. For those of you that aren't aware, Veronica, shout out to Veronica, Deanna, Master Death Hancock, and Jazz for sending me information on the D4VD case this last couple of days. Thank you so much. But I do think that it was sloppy. But in my opinion, I don't think David wanted to let her go. I think the reason that he purchased, think about this. He bought Teslas are expensive. They're over $100,000 for a Tesla. And he had a 2023 black Tesla. And then he's getting another red Tesla. I think it was because he could not let go of Celeste. She was in the trunk of the car. I don't think it was because he couldn't figure out what to do with her. I think it's because he wasn't willing to let her go. He wanted to have that power and dominion over her. And in my opinion, it is very possible that trip to Santa Barbara County was to get her. But let me know what you think if you have a different opinion. Do you think he kept Celeste intentionally because he wanted to have power and dominion over her? Or do you think he kept Celeste because he didn't know what else to do with her? Put a 1 in the chat if you think it's related to the power and dominion, and put a 2 in the chat if you think it's because he just didn't know what to do with her. And we don't all have to agree. So all thoughts are welcome on this.
in public and mentioned the idea of this 55-pound burn cage being delivered to that property that David was apparently staying at, that there was a chainsaw that was recovered. Now, to be clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, right, no evidence that those were used, but you would seem to suggest, hey, this goes to state of mind, this goes to planning, right? So you're talking about, one theory would be there was an effort to potentially dispose of her body, and maybe the car was towed before it could actually be used, right? That made news in the past few weeks.
I think that's, I believe that that's what happened. It's only my theory, but I believe that this was like one of the ideas. I'm talking plural. I think there's multiple people involved, at least trying to dispose of her part of it. And I think one of the plans might have been, okay, what about if we cremate her? Or what if we do this? And so they ordered these things, and it was at least an option available to them, which they didn't put in motion. And then I do think that they probably got cold feet, were afraid, where do we do it? Who does it? Like, should we just pay somebody to do it? How can we just get rid of the Tesla altogether, put it in a lake? And none of those plans, then all of a sudden it gets towed. And it's like, uh-oh, now what? But why they would leave the Tesla where they left it is mind-boggling.
I have to.
And that wasn't the first time that Tesla was parked on Bluebird Avenue, right? It had been ticketed there and parked there before. So he had successfully parked that Tesla on Bluebird. We're going to continue on with this, but I do want to say thank you to Deanna for the $2 super sticker. Thank you so much, Deanna. That is so kind of you. Thank you, Texas Life Julie, for the $5 super sticker. Thank you so much. I am really grateful. I'm putting that toward new editing equipment. You're going to start to see that being employed. And thank you to NJAZ. Wow, 5 channel memberships. If you guys got one of those, please make sure you say thank you to NJAZ. And thank you, NJAZ. That is so kind of you. Thank you to Michael for the $1.99 super sticker. That is so kind of you. Thank you so much. So I am working with new editing equipment. And thank you, Krista, for the $5 super sticker. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. I will be putting that to good use for the channel. So thank you so much for that. And this is my email. If you have any tips or any information you want to share, you can email me there. All right, let's continue on. So Steve Fischer really does seem like, and he knows the case probably better than anyone else that's speaking right now, but maybe better than anybody else besides one of the other witnesses or the actual district attorney's office or LAPD. I mean, he's really on this. Now, he seems to think that there was going to be a plan B, and he seems to think that she was left in the Tesla because they didn't know what to do with her. I have a different theory, but we're not always going to all agree on everything. And I think it's good to keep our minds open to new information. So I'm going to keep my mind open to the fact that maybe Steve Fischer knows more about this and the reasoning behind this than what I know. Let's continue on.
Ask about this grand jury. Now, let's be clear about something. You may be very limited in what you can say. So anything you can't say, completely understand, but I have to ask. Can you confirm in any way whether you believe a grand jury, and maybe more specifically a grand jury that can return an indictment, is being impaneled right now and is hearing evidence?
That part, I did release some things on Twitter because I got a handwritten notice to appear for a notice or for order to show cause on a contempt charge. And I put in that tweet that I had in the past appeared a couple times from a grand jury. I'm not saying it's a grand jury for this case or whatever case, but I was given this handwritten notice to show up. I was given it on a Friday and told to show up on a Tuesday. And I wasn't told what the charge, I wasn't the exact, of what I was being accused of. So how could I hire representation? How could I defend myself? And I also said, listen, I flew in for this, I'll just say a meeting, right? And where I was given this piece of paper, I flew in from Georgia where I was on a search and rescue mission, and they knew I was flying out that evening. And I said, I can't, Tuesday, and you were not even telling me what it's about. And there was no public docket about it. There was nothing. It was all very secretive, and it really worried me. And that's why I came out with it publicly, because I felt like people needed to know. It's the only protection I had, about this secret hearing going on. And I didn't show up for it. I still don't know to this day what happened in that hearing. I know that a hearing did apparently take place. I was told by somebody that was at the courthouse, but I don't know if there's a warrant for me. I have no idea.
So
in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I don't think there is a warrant for Steve Fischer. I don't think the hearing may have just been maybe, and now we're finding out, I thought maybe they brought it to him in Georgia. I didn't realize that he had left his search and rescue to fly back to California and then flew back out to Georgia. I knew he was in Georgia for a search and rescue. I didn't know that he had returned back. But I don't think that he is in trouble. I think that there was some kind of a dispute or something like that, that the judge in Department 123 may have wanted his testimony on. I don't think that the deputy district attorney, in my opinion, is going to burn bridges with private investigator Steve Fischer. It could also be that they just wanted him to zip it and to stop saying so much publicly. Instead, they just sent him into a tailspin of what I would call awfulizing, right? Where you're just thinking about all of the awful things that it could be. And, you can see the worry on his face. You can see the little crease right here, even that he's worried, that he thought, that he might still to this day be in trouble. I don't think he's in trouble, in my opinion. I think if he had been, he would have heard about it. But let me know if you have a different opinion. But they may have just wanted him to, tamp down what he was saying, or they needed him to come in and explain something to the judge regarding another witness's testimony or regarding a piece of evidence that he found. Remember, he is the one that found the burn cage. He is the one that found the chainsaw. He's the one that found the final photo of Celeste that we know about. And we don't know what else he may have found. But I don't think the deputy district attorney's office is going to burn bridges with Steve Fischer. I think he's going to be an important witness, in my opinion, for their case. Let's continue on.
You can't say at this point in time whether you've been held in contempt of court and for what reason, right? That you can't say.
It's not even that I can't say. I don't know, because if I call the courthouse, there's no case number. I can't even check anything. Yeah. So it's they're very well. A hearing did take place. So I'll just be honest. There was a reporter after I tweeted that. There was a reporter that showed up for the hearing that wanted to know what was going on, and they pushed it from the morning to the afternoon docket, and it was after the docketed cases, and then they were told to leave the courtroom. And so I don't know, and I can't call and find out because I don't have a case number, so I have no idea.
Also can't confirm this, but this is based on TMZ's reporting. They're saying that if there's a grand jury, that it's being spearheaded by career homicide prosecutor Beth Silverman. Now, for people who don't know, is she a big deal out in LA? I mean, what should we know about her as far as you know?
She is a big deal. She's the one who prosecutes most of the death penalty cases, the high profile cases, and she is fierce and aggressive. And so it's the exact type of prosecutor you want to have in a case like this. It's also a really scary person to have in a situation like mine, where there's a potential secret contempt hearing going on, and that person may be spearheading as well. So this is what worries me, and that's why I want the press and everybody to know about it, because I don't think it should happen that way. But as far as David goes, if indeed he's indicted and she is the prosecutor on it, like she doesn't lose, and she takes on tough cases and cold cases, and and she gets convictions.
Okay, so now we know why he's so worried. I'll be shocked if the deputy district attorney decides to burn her bridges with Steve Fischer. I think she's going to want to have him as a witness for her case. He may be I don't know if he's in some kind of contempt. He may have let something slip that he wasn't supposed to. My understanding is that he did testify twice before the grand jury. He says it was before a grand jury, not the grand jury. And so he's really trying to be careful. But, we do believe that he testified twice before this grand jury. And I think he's going to be an important witness in the case. I don't think he could get in trouble. Maybe he'll get a fine or something like that. But if anything, it would be a slap on the wrist. I don't think it's going to be anything major. And if I were him, I would have my attorney go down there and find out what it was about. But maybe, I don't know what kind of budget he's on. Not everybody can afford to have a lawyer go in to hire to just find out something like that for you. And even if the lawyer did go in, would they tell him? I don't know. So what do you guys think? Are you watching closely? So it sounds like everybody is worried about this particular deputy district attorney, and she is a big deal. And we know from Mark Garagos, who was the criminal defense attorney who defended Scott Peterson and other numerous high-profile cases in the California, LA area. We know from Mark Garagos that he does not believe that they would put this particular prosecutor on this case if it was an investigative grand jury, which is why and to be clear, an investigative grand jury cannot issue indictments. He believes this is a regular grand jury and that they can issue indictments. Let's continue on. This is a really great interview with a lot of new information that I didn't have, and I'm assuming some of you guys didn't have it either.
Based on what you've seen, assuming for a moment there is a grand jury that's been impaneled and hearing evidence, and assuming it's a grand jury that can return an indictment, would you say we could maybe expect that multiple people would be indicted at the same time, that it's not just one person, that if you're talking about several people allegedly involved in what happened to Celeste, is that something we may expect?
Yes, and this isn't based on anything that I may or may not know about a grand jury or anything, but based on what I've seen evidence-wise, I'd be shocked if it's not multiple people. And I do think it'll all drop at one time. I don't think it'd be just like, one person and then start going after or the others. I think they're going to wrap them all at one time. I do think there's going to be one or two people that have.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Multiple people, you guys. Multiple people.
Really direct knowledge that are going to get immunity and unfortunately are going to not really pay a price for this. But I think that's the only way that they're going to get the main people.
And if an indictment or indictments drop, do you think that's when the Emmys findings and the cause and manner of death with respect to Celeste will be unsealed, and we and maybe Celeste's family will finally know what happened?
I don't think so. I think they're going to hold it tight. I think one of the reasons I know why they use investigative juries, grand juries, obviously, but also it's to avoid a prelim hearing where you have to kind of show that discovery and that evidence. And by past dealings and knowing conversations I've had with people involved on the prosecution side and the secrecy wanted, I think they're going to, until they absolutely have to disclose anything, I don't think they're going to, I think they're going to be very minimal on that. I do think the ME's office wants to put the information out, but
we know the ME's office wants to put the information out. We know there was like some kind of a dispute between the ME and with the LAPD regarding that. And we know that from listening to Mark Garagos, and for those of you that didn't see my show on that, Mark Garagos and also Harvey Levin, who is with TMZ, we know that there has been ongoing disputes between the LAPD and the ME, and that there's a new police captain with the police force, with the LAPD, who is trying to make a better relationship with the medical examiner's office. But they've historically had conflicts. And I believe that what the ME wanted to do, which is why we did hear from the LAPD police captain, is they wanted to clarify that Celeste was not frozen. I think that was the biggest thing. And it seems like once the police came out and clarified that, it seems like everything with the ME's office settled down.
they're,
For sure. They came out quite.
Let me back this up a little bit.
use investigative juries, grand juries, obviously, but also it's to avoid a prelim hearing where you have to kind of show that discovery and that evidence. And by past dealings and knowing conversations I've had with people involved on the prosecution side and the secrecy wanted, I think they're going to, until they absolutely have to disclose anything, I don't think they're going to, I think they're going to be very minimal on that. I do think the ME's office wants to put the information out, but they're,
For sure. They came out quite strongly about this court order and said it's so unusual. And there seems to be this battle between the ME's office and the LAPD. I mean, by the way, we reported about this, but there was mixed reporting. LAPD came out and said, despite the reporting that you're hearing about Celeste's body being frozen and her being decapitated, we are denying that. I mean, by the way, can you shed any light on that discrepancy?
Well, I thought that was a completely ridiculous thing from the start. I knew that was right, but also they came out with.
And to be clear, the ME's office never said she was frozen. That reporting came from TMZ.
Statement saying that the purpose of getting the record sealed was not, to avoid transparency, but it was to make sure that detectives got the information before the public did. Okay, detectives now have that information, you got to believe. So why not now go ahead? If it's not transparency thing, why not release it now? I just don't think they will. And I understand that they have their controls and whatnot, but if charges drop, it's, the people, the state of California versus, I mean, this is something that we do have a right to know something about, and especially, and we should know if this person's still on the loose and they're a threat, or it could be a threat, we need to know about these things. And I think some information, even a press conference, would be, well advised.
If they were going to do it, they would have done it. They have absolutely no intention of doing anything that's going to jeopardize this case. And again, we heard that the FBI and DOJ have been arresting people with that Discord group that we talked about, with the number 6 and the number 4, the number 7 in it, that we talked about on previous live streams. So we don't know how big this goes, how wide this goes, or how far up this goes. But it very well could include, because that group is active on Discord and Roblox. And these are both groups that both places that David was active on and that Celeste was active on. So this may go a little bit bigger than just this case, which is maybe why they're not willing to jeopardize it. I understand Steve Fischer's feeling, and I wish he was being arrested for at least some of the crimes, but we don't know everything yet. And knowing what we do about Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman and what a superstar prosecutor she is, I think we're just going to have to trust her judgment that she's going to do the best she can to get a conviction. Because, a lot of people thought that O.J. Simpson should have been convicted, and he wasn't. A lot of people thought Casey Anthony should have been convicted, and she wasn't. She wants to make sure. That's my opinion, allegedly.
Before we wrap things up, before I let you go, I want to take it back to Celeste. You've been looking into this case for quite some time. What did you learn about Celeste Rivas Hernandez? What would you like the viewers to know about her and what her life was like, her short life? And B, have you had the opportunity to speak to her family or her friends? How are they doing at this point? So, if you could shed some light on that, that'd be really.
And please put some purple hearts in the chat with her name, Justice for Celeste, with purple hearts, you guys.
Great.
I have talked to a couple people that were close to Celeste, not direct family members, but people that were very close. And in fact, some of the people that were involved in helping to find her first couple times she ran away. Celeste obviously was somewhat troubled, but I mean, the huge percentage of teenagers her age growing up, especially in these times, of course you get that. I'll tell you why I haven't reached out to her family, because I do want to be respectful of them. I know that they're mourning and whatnot. However, Celeste was not a true missing person. There was a missing persons report filed since 24, but she had appeared at home multiple times in between that time, and they knew where she was staying in Los Angeles, and I have hard proof of that. I have text messages from family members. What they were doing was they did.
Okay, so that's the number 5 huge update, you guys. The family members knew she was staying with David. Some of you guys have been trying to tell me this in the comment section. But now we're getting confirmation from Steve Fischer. Let me just play it again in case you didn't hear what he said.
Reached out to her family because I do want to be respectful of them. I know that they're mourning and whatnot. However, Celeste was not a true missing person. There was a missing persons report filed since 24, but she had appeared at home multiple times in between that time, and they knew where she was staying in Los Angeles, and I have hard proof of that. I have text messages from family members. What they were doing was they didn't want a CPS investigation into her not going to school, so they left this report open. And I'm not blaming them, for what happened to her. But if they were having a problem controlling her, then there are systems in place through the school and the counseling system and whatnot that can help and assist. But I don't want to talk to them because I feel like I have to ask those questions, like, why did you allow this? And I think that would be kind of like, victim blaming. But, listen, there was a lot of failures along the way here. And David was kind of like green lighted, even by his managers. And, a lot of people knew his friends.
Green lighted by his managers. Did you hear that, you guys? Let me back it up. Is this why DA Beth Silverman was out in the hall talking to Rob M's attorney, and he was talking to his attorney about, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Is this why Rob M was out in the hall talking about his attorney allegedly about Deputy DA being, quote, pushy about wanting to know why he didn't call the police? Listen again, you guys, and let me know what you think. Did the managers, Josh Marshall, whose only denial that he knew anything about this was in a response in the comment section for a TikTok, let that sink in, and then Rob M, who's never responded.
So they left this report open, and I'm not blaming them, for what happened to her. But if they were having a problem controlling her, then there are systems in place through the school and the counseling system and whatnot that can help and assist. But I don't want to talk to them because I feel like I have to ask those questions, like, why did you allow this? And I think that would be kind of like, victim blaming. But, listen, there was a lot of failures along the way here. And David was kind of like green lighted, even by his managers. And, a lot of people knew, his friends knew she was underage, and they allowed this to happen. And then.
So there goes the friends didn't know. They thought she was in college. The friends knew, you guys. The managers knew, according to Steve Fischer. And sadly, we're learning that her family knew too.
Then look where we're at, and even now, who knows how many of those people are even talking? Are they still protecting David? I mean, it's crazy how nobody's come out and told the story yet.
And you can see he genuinely looks pained when he's talking about that. So is David doing more snitching on himself? Let's look at this together. Let me pause this and take this down for a second. I mean, this concert that I'm showing right now, Rob M and Josh Marshall were at this concert with Celeste. And that's Celeste and David at the Doheny property right there that we just talked about. Both of those images that you can see on your screen. The one is in the kitchen of the Doheny property, and the other one, the black and white picture, was taken in the bathroom of the Doheny property. But let's talk about the snitching. So shout out to NJAS for this. Okay. So this is D4VD group. This is provided by Sweet Boba, SW33T Boba. And it says, I will see you on the other side. I'm sorry. So this is what it says under the caption. This is from an anonymous confession website. There's no messages to this Celeste. There are none to Asia or Neo. This was sent on August the 5th of 2025. So she was found by law enforcement on September the 8th of 2025. So apparently you can't choose the date. Ironically, this has a D4VD song, but the fact that it is from before we even knew she was done away with is very strange. Is it a coincidence? And this person says, I don't think so. And you can see, I will see you on the other side. I'm sorry. The name here is Celeste. And then one more dance, David, D4VD. So was this David snitching on himself? What do you guys think? Are you watching closely? Let's see what you guys say about this. Let me play this through. So what do you guys think about this? I want to say thank you so much to NJazz for the 20-pound, or is it 20 EU or 20-pound super sticker? Thank you so much, NJazz. That is so kind of you. I think it's pounds. Am I wrong? I might be wrong. But anyway, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. I'll be putting that toward editing. You're going to see that new editing that I got. Max says, sadly, she never had a future to look forward to, as David's celebrity and lifestyle seemed to be very appealing. Yeah. Gorlak, the date on this, what I just showed you guys, it says Tuesday, August the 5th of 2025. Are you talking about the Reddit group? Tuesday, August 5th. It's pound. Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure I was saying it right. Stitching on himself. Yep. And it said, yeah, let me just show this again because people are like, what is it? Let me move myself over. Okay. Let me take this down and put this back up. I'm sorry if I didn't leave it up long enough. Okay. So this says Tuesday, the 5th of August, Tuesday, 5 August 2025, Celeste. That's as though it was posted a month and 3 days before she was found by law enforcement. Remember, the impound lot called law enforcement on September 8th, which would have been one day after what should have been her 15th birthday, but we know she did not make it to that. And it says, I will see you on the other side. I'm SRY, sorry. And then it's got listed One More Dance by D4VD, the preview. And then the account is Celeste. And let's see what a couple of comments say on this. It says, I wouldn't put it past David. And then this is another post by the same person. It says, you will never forget to be that one that got away. I hope that the invisible string theory exists for us. So I think that's really, really interesting. Kind of sad to think about it. So it, what do you guys think? Are you watching closely? Max says, it's very sad. She was more of a possession to David and not treated as a real human. I agree with your assessment. Njaz says, very telling. Yeah, Njaz is the one that found this. So thank you, Njaz. And Nicole says, in my opinion, he snitches to see who he can shock in many of his songs. Yeah, he dropped so many breadcrumbs, you guys. If you haven't gone through my playlist on this case, please consider doing that. The other one that's really, really interesting is one where I do a deep dive into his psychology. It's very, very detailed profile of David. It's my opinion. Gorlock lives says right before he went on tour. Yeah, you're right, because he left. This is posted in August, and actually it's after, right? Because he left for his tour. He hopped on the tour bus. They parked the Tesla. Wait, hold on. Yeah, they parked the Tesla for the last time on July that we know about on July 29th. And they hopped on a tour bus, and I'm assuming it's David and Neo that night. And he had like what I'm thinking is like maybe a technical show where they were working out the technical. It wasn't like a regular show on the 30th. And then he posted this in August. Let me see if I can get the date on it again. He posted this on August the 5th, Tuesday, August 5th. See you on the other side. I'm sorry. We don't know for sure that it was him, but it was posted before, allegedly, reportedly. This could be somebody punking us, so we don't know. Shaza says, justice for Celeste. And Cabling, thank you for modding. He does say that with his songs, his inhumane songs. Thank you, Michael. I agree. Krista says, vibes so disturbing. Flojo says, around 11:30 a.m. And then Ozzy says, I keep sending a comment, but I can't see it. So this is the fourth time I try. I just want to say thank you whoever gifted me a subscription, a channel membership. Well, that is Njaz that gifted you that. And she is right here. So I'm not sure why your comment didn't come through. I did see like a little pause that my comments didn't come through either. So it could just be a glitch. Tough Luck says she was at the show on the 30th. Well, we've seen somebody that is being disputed whether it's her. We don't know that for sure, but it's possible. Anili Manili says, don't nails turn black once? I don't know. I don't know. Nicole said, I think it might be from Njaz. It is Njaz that did that. Let me do a shout out to Njaz, our executive producer. Thank you so much for your great modding. Thank you also to our head mods, our Njaz and Michael L. Cole. And I just want to shout out our producers, Sasha Angel, George Brown, Michael L. Cole, Christy Ballantyne, and Brenda Owens. And Brenda Owens is a new producer, so welcome to the Reporter Room family. And thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to become a channel member, subscribing is free and it helps me out a lot. So please subscribe. Channel memberships are $2.99, and it helps support the channel so I can do some of these smaller niche cases like this one. That aren't as mainstream, but are, in my opinion, this is probably one of the most important cases I've ever covered. I desperately want to get justice for Celeste. I know you guys do too, or you wouldn't be here advocating for her. And if you're watching on the replay, please put her name down. Please put up some purple hearts. Please do something kind to show your support for justice for Celeste. And I want to extend coffee thanks and super thanks and coffee gratitude and gifted channel memberships. Thank you so much. Let's do a couple more comments. Ms. Dizzle and Njaz is saying, please click the please click the notification bell. There is going to be an arrest, and just like on the other case, I was right there breaking the news on the Spencer and Monique Tepe case. I did live stream the arrest. If you guys want to get notified when I go live, you need to hit the notification bell, and then it'll just send you an alert. Michael said, all civilly. Yeah, Michael's right. We all have different opinions. We're not going to all agree on anything. And we also need to keep our minds open to new information. Thank you for the purple hearts, you guys. Look at these beautiful purple hearts. They're gorgeous. So thank you to our mods, Cabling and Lori. I don't think I thanked you earlier, Lori. And thank you, Rob Top, for being here. Thank you, Deanna, for modding. Texas Life, Julie says, appreciate your update. Appreciate you too, Julie. And thank you, our head mod, Njaz, and our other head mod, Brother Mike. Thank you, Cabling, for modding. Anonymous says, I at least hope they took his passport so he doesn't have the ability to flee. The only ones who would have the jurisdiction to do that would be the Justice Department or the U.S. Marshals. Juanita said, I don't think anyone should get off charges. They shouldn't have to offer plea deals in order to get someone to talk. Well, a lot of times they do, because people have the right in the United States. Thank you for the beautiful purple hearts, Nancy. They have the right in the United States to not incriminate themselves. And there's a new channel members pull up if you want to go do that. All right, guys, I will see you on the next one. Please, if you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Give this a thumbs up and drop me a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below.